I'll go ahead and kick things off. So welcome everyone who's able to join us today. Thank you so much for coming. The name of today's webinar, of course, is the US-Canada Digital Economy, Powering Market Performance with Strategic Partnership. Today's session is hosted by Convergia and joined by guests from BCE Global, USA. And I'm Barb Mitchell from JSA, and I'll be your moderator for today. So just as we get going here today, I just wanted to sort of run through the order of events. So a few housekeeping notes. Shortly, we'll have the opportunity, of course, to hear from our featured speakers, Kevin Patterson, Head of Global Sales for Convergia, along with Robin Constantin, SVP of Global Sales for BCE Global. While each of them will give us a little bit of an introduction on themselves and their companies, but then as we go sort of deeper into the conversation today, we'll have the opportunity to hear about the advantages that Canada offers to US companies from both an investment and a partnership standpoint. And we'll get the inside track on the art of making cross-border partnerships from BCE Global. And of course, then we'll hear from both Kevin and Robin about how easily you can access these opportunities. So lastly, just in the note of housekeeping, just if time permitting, of course, today, we would love to answer any questions that you may have. So throughout the session, feel free to add your questions into the Q&A, and we'll do our best to get to as many as possible. So let's get started. Kevin and Robin, first of all, thank you so much for joining us today. It's great to have you. Kevin, we'll start with you. If you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about yourself and your role at Convergia.
Certainly. Thanks, Barb. And Robin, also, thank you for having me attend. I've been in the industry roughly 34 years. Currently, I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. Spent 51 years of the majority of my life in Buffalo, New York, which really allowed me to have a really good sense for the working relations between Canada and the US. I think I spent just as much time up in Canada as I did in the US over the years. I worked for primarily 4 industries, all within the telecommunications industry, specializing in wireline and wireless. And as the industry evolved, I also shifted a good majority of my positions from the direct sales more so to the indirect, getting me some expertise in the agent market as well as the wholesale market. So I appreciate it and look forward to today's discussion.
Great, thank you. Robin, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your role at BCE Global?
Definitely. Thanks, Barb, Kevin, as well. Thanks as well for the invite. It's always a pleasure to have a discussion about Canada and how we can help our partners like Convergia, tap into this great opportunity. So like Barb said, my name is Robin Constantin. I run the sales division of our wholesale organization. Been in the industry as well quite a bit of time. I'll skip that piece, but I'll just give you a sense of what I do for a living today. For the last 10 to 12 years, basically run a sales organization that has a responsibility, obviously, for sales, for engineering and all of the customer operation piece of our business. We obviously run an organization that has folks across Canada and as well in selected cities within the United States that serve really national, US and international customers. So in a nutshell, that's what I do on day to day. And it's a pleasure being here again for this webinar.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Robin and Kevin. And so let's dive in a little bit deeper here. If we can hear from both of you on how your companies approach channel, and especially just a bit of an understanding on the opportunities that exist currently between the US and Canada. And if you don't mind, Kevin, let's start with you and let's kick things off by hearing about Convergia.
I appreciate it. Yeah, so Convergia, it's a privately held company. We have approximately 200 employees, and we've been in the industry for about 25 years with proven success in the industry. As a whole, we're a Pan-American aggregator, very specific value-added services offering global solutions to multi-location enterprise companies. What we do is we provide connectivity, interoperability, complexity, managed and monitored for our customers and our partners so they don't have to. We currently have offices or primary locations in Montreal, Canada, Our US headquarters is in Miami, and then we also have large offices throughout Lima, Peru, as well as numerous other Latin American countries. The foundation of the company is through our wireline and wireless connectivity offerings, as well as 3CX and a variety of voice offerings and many, many more. If you look at our go-to-market strategy, we do not sell through the direct market, right? Everything that we do is from an indirect channel, working directly with TSBs or technology solutions brokers. Some of those are Tolaris, Avant, AppDirect, TD Synex. Each of those entities have anywhere from hundreds to thousands of sub-agents that work and support and drive business directly through them. In addition to working through the agent channel, Convergia works through wholesale. So on the wholesale side, we partner up with market partners, we partner up with VARs or value-added resellers, as well as a variety of successful MSPs throughout the industry. One of our big strengths with Convergia is our ability to provide local billing in each, if not most, of those Latin American countries throughout Pan America. By having personnel, brick and mortar offices, and the experiences that we've had over the years, this truly gives us a tremendous uplift over our competition, as well as knowing the various different tax laws. If you look at the competition throughout the United States, the majority of organizations or even aggregators throughout the US have done very well inside the US. And the next evolution of expansion is to try to expand that business into Latin America. What they find, right, even though based on their successes in the US is a very easy country to do business with. When you try to expand, most organizations do want one unified bill. They want things done in that local currency, and they certainly want to make sure they have a company who fully understands those tax laws. So when they start to progress through that area, they see it's a little bit more difficult than what they thought. Convergia, we started the opposite, right? Our background started throughout Canada and all of Latin America. This is where our roots are. And now we're expanding more so even into the US. So that one area is what really puts us above and beyond for most of our competitors. Back to you, Barb.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Robin, why don't we switch to you now for a second and allow you a moment to talk about, from your perspective and the perspective of BCE Global, just this idea of why Canada, what the opportunity is in Canada and how you at BCE Global are committed to providing opportunities there.
Definitely. Obviously, BCE Global, just a bit of context, obviously, is our operating companies outside of our natural borders of Canada. So really, BCE Global is a Bell Canada company. So it's always a pleasure for me to kind of, walk through a little bit what is the true opportunity of looking at Canada. And what I'd like to do maybe is kind of give you a couple of pointers to everybody on this webinar around why Canada and why should anybody really operating within the United States or even in Latin America really care about what is around Canada. So one of the things that is sometimes not known as much is really Canada's overall positions in terms of GDP. We're the 9th largest in terms of the GDP, and actually projected to hit 8th by 2029. So, and that put it in context, especially as you look at the south of the border of just the sheer amount of population, not only in the US, but all around Latin America, with a population of approximately 40 million people. That's quite the, we're really up there in terms of the GDP. And another piece that becomes, I think, very interesting for all to understand is really just the trade. Over $1.2 trillion of trade being done. That's 2/3 of Canada's overall global trade. That was a stats from 2022. Just the sheer amount of trade that's being done between, for example, the United States and Canada. A little known fact, but as well very important, and especially when we work with companies like Convergia, is the NAFTA deal that was signed years back in 1994. around our borders and the trade in terms of the North American Free Trade Agreement that was signed, as I said, in 1994, which includes Mexico, the United States, and Canada. And that has opened up an amount of trade that I just talked about between the three countries, but especially between Canada and the United States. So in a nutshell, there is lots of opportunities that reside in Canada. And one of the stats that we've been publishing quite a bit is just the sheer amount of companies that are headquarters, let's say, in the United States and have locations in Canada, right? So some of the work we've been doing with in terms of business intelligence, and we've shared that with partners such as Convergia, is really around almost 60,000 US-based companies that have offices and locations in Canada. So they're actually headquartered in the United States, but have what I call beachheads within the Canadian borders, which opens up a tremendous opportunity around why Canada may be of an interest, especially looking in from a lens from the United States. So these are some of the, I would say, the high macro reasons why we should look at Canada as a market for expansion for a lot of our partners, obviously for Converge.
And I think that, I mean, I'd love to hear from you, Kevin, on just your thoughts. I feel that the synergies between Converge and BCE Global are so nice, given your roots in Canada, Converge's roots in Canada, and your global purview. And I'd love to hear from you, if you could share sort of from your perspective, what advantages you see Canada having and what this means for the partnership that you have with BCE Global.
Yeah, thanks. And Robin said it perfectly, right? The border crossings between the U.S. and Canada, there are numerous, extremely easy to get across. There are 1.3 million businesses throughout Canada. 480,000 of those are in Ontario. 270,000 of those are in Quebec. That fits perfectly with the way that Bell Canada goes to market, right? And as Converge is looking to position itself accordingly with the right partners, right, that makes Bell Canada stand out even more. Another thing that Robin mentioned, the number of businesses that are either headquartered in the US and do business in Canada or vice versa. My understanding is it's a third of Canada's corporate sector are part of an M&E or a multinational enterprise. And again, those are either organizations that are headquartered throughout Canada and have locations throughout the US and the world, or vice versa. So as Converge is looking to maximize on its high bookable index business, and that is that enterprise customer with multi-locations scattered throughout Pan America, it just makes an absolute perfect fit to do business with Bell Canada.
Yeah, and I think that it would be nice, I think now, Robin, if you don't mind, if we could sort of switch the conversation to understanding, I mean, we're looking at this map here, and it would be nice to understand if you could explain to our audience just how BCE Global is uniquely set up to service this opportunity.
Definitely. So in terms of, I mean, first of all, BCE Global, as I said before, it's a Bell Canada company. Obviously, we're a communication company that serves, wireline, wireless, and within the media space, over 40,000 employees across the country. So obviously, we are a major player within the Canadian space. And this map kind of highlights, a bit of where we operate, either as the ILEC or as a CLEC. So the dark blue is really the incumbent territory, right? In cities, to Kevin's point before, within Ontario and Quebec, as an example, Toronto and Montreal. Now, if you look at these two provinces of Quebec and Ontario, now you're talking close to 60+% of that GDP that I talked about in previous slides that really resides within that dark blue. Also, a large chunk of the Canadian population, again, against that 40 million, reside within Ontario and Quebec. So as an incumbent player, we do play heavily within our borders from Manitoba all the way to Newfoundland, which would be from west to east. In the light blue is what we call our competitive local exchange, and obviously cities such as Calgary, Edmonton, and Vancouver. We do have quite a bit of network that touches lots of businesses in these areas, and obviously we work with our partners if need be in this part of the country. But Bell does have lots of assets within the western part of the country. So in a nutshell, I would think Bell is a perfect gateway for partners such as Converge as they come in and really tap into that Canadian opportunity.
So let's talk about who can make the most use of this. Let's talk about this, this sort of ecosystem that exists of companies that do business on both sides of the border that may want to talk to Convergia and BCE Global. And just, if you wouldn't mind, maybe you start, Robin, and just talk a little bit about what are some of the industries that are taking advantage of cross-border trade.
Oh, definitely. I think it taps well in terms of the free trade agreement that I alluded to before, and just the sheer amount of trade that goes between the United States and Canada. But there are some sectors, Barb, that are key, right? And if you look at the automotive industry, in today's shape and form, in terms of what I call the today economy in the automotive industry, to even tomorrow's, where everything's moving to electric vehicles and so forth, both countries' supply chains are extremely tied together. So that it be for cars that are manufactured in southwestern Ontario and that are moving to be finished in Detroit, or vice versa, that free trade agreement that I alluded to permits a lot of that trade to go between the countries, and automotive is a perfect example of that. Not only for today's world, but as well in tomorrow's world. And what I mean by tomorrow's world, as we're all moving towards electric vehicles and so forth, that ecosystem is extremely present, and again, taking advantage of that trade between the countries. Perfect examples is recent Volkswagen investments in southwestern Ontario, or Nordvolt, Swedish company investing in the greater Montreal area in terms of batteries. All of these are not only for the Canadian market, but again, it's to really exploit that vast North American free trade agreements that we have. Now, what's really important to that, it's not selling to Volkswagen or selling to Nordvolt, but really it's the ecosystem that's around there, where there's tons of suppliers again that reside on both sides of the border. So that's just one example of where our economies are extremely well tied, but there's a ton more, right? The last one I maybe want to hit is around technology, right? The IT sector, AI, machine learning. Again, big sectors within Canada, and as well are big sectors within the United States. And again, the amount of just trade and information sharing between countries in regards to this specific sectors is enormous. It's a massive opportunity to be tapped in for partners like Convergia.
And Robin, those are all absolutely perfect. And I think some of the other industries that Canada has done very, very well for itself. One, agriculture. Two, the food industry. When you look at the food industry, you often deal with numerous multi-location retail opportunities, right? Both BCE Global and Convergia specialize in this. So when organizations like that are looking for one entity to be able to provide a full solution across all of their locations, at Convergia, we can partner again with companies like BCE Global, but we also have those partnerships directly with the OEMs to be able to provide full-blown solutions, including hardware, network, and management across the board. Agriculture goes, as the industry has evolved and changed, Convergia has partnered with organizations like Libelium and Seed, who over the years have become some of the top producers in sensors throughout the industry. If you look at agriculture today, these sensors paired up with either LoRa or LTE connectivity give the opportunity for companies whether it's wineries, farms, to be able to get into the science of the actual soil content and everything else, so that the products that they produce can be done at a lower cost and perfected with minimal damage as they go through the growing season, which is pretty incredible.
Have you seen, and this is one of the questions that's actually come from our audience, so I thought we would jump ahead. I know we have a Q&A planned at the end, but I thought it seemed like a good time to ask this question. But has there been an upswing? The specific question was, have you seen an influx of international Canadian opportunities recently? So just curious where the trends are at the moment. Are they on the upswing, or is there increased demand?
My personal opinion is the answer to that is yes. We have seen a higher demand. And again, if you go back to what I said earlier, as organizations see success, more specifically in the agent community throughout the United States, they try to expand on that. Many of those companies already had locations throughout Canada and Latin America. What we're seeing now, though, is these large enterprise multi-location Pan-American organizations, they truly are looking for one provider, right? They want somebody that can handle all of their business across the board. So for aggregators to be competitive, they need to be linked up with companies like BCE Global, as well as numerous other MVNOs and MNOs throughout Latin America. So I think the structure has been there over the years, but the demand based on what the industry is asking for and driving, that's definitely increased. And those organizations that can provide that will certainly exceed over the next 5 to 10 years for sure.
Yeah. And certainly, Robin, I know that you shared some economic numbers that show just the growth that's happening economically, even to drive that within Canada.
No, for sure, Barb, and to add to Kevin's point, as I said at the intro, I've been doing this job for at least 10 plus years. There's always been, a flow of U.S. business coming into Canada, where Bell has played within that ecosystem. But I think what's been different in the last, I would say, 3 to 4 years is how that business is now flowing into Canada and how we as a partner need to tap into that. And to Kevin's point is really how we work with companies like Convergia, and them being an aggregator, and their overall type of solution back to the marketplace encompasses all of the pieces that are needed to operate global networks for some of those medium to large, U.S. or out of the U.S. headquartered companies. So there has been a flow. I would say the way it's now flowing in is through diverse distribution channels. And obviously, this channel is an important one for BCE.
Right. I actually think that's a really nice lead in to where we want to go next with this conversation, which is about, so what if someone does have an opportunity? What do they do? Is it a, easy process, difficult process? Who do they talk to? What do they do next? Do you start, Kevin? Yeah, you go ahead.
Yeah, it really is an easy process. And it's an easier process when an organization like Convergia has those right strategic partners aligned, obviously like Bell Global for sure. So, and again, we don't go to business through any means of direct. So everything that we do is primarily through either agents or wholesale. We completely separate those two entities. If an organization is looking to become a partner, they can go onto our website, which I will add, we're actively right now going through and rechanging the Convergia website to be more in tune with the indirect market and through the agents and TSPs. If you are a wholesaler and you're looking for those capabilities, right, you can reach out directly to me. The email address is on the website, but it's a very easy process. So we go through, we take the opportunity, we register that opportunity so that it's not in any type of competition with anyone else. But I think in the indirect market, one of the largest fears that agents have had in the past is that they would provide an opportunity and they run the risk that an organization would then have another division within the company and try to sell those. So with us, we eliminate that right from the start, because that's the only way we do business is indirect.
And on our side, Barb and Kevin, is obviously, so we operate in the wholesale space. So obviously we don't have direct salespeople that are out there in the United States, for example, selling our products and services. So clearly the model we've chosen, and the best model in our view, is to work directly on the wholesale side, activating customers such as Convergia and their channel partners to be as efficient as they can within Canada. So the business goes through, in this case, through Convergia, and then we have an account team that is dedicated and assigned to the Convergia account to enable their needs within the Canadian airspace.
And Robin, I will say, as BCE Global tries to increase its overall market share and work with organizations like ourselves, the feedback that I've gotten and the working relations that our salespeople have had with your organization salespeople have been nothing but positive. Extremely easy to work. The idea is to get BCE Global to maximize those white space or entities that you currently do not have any business with today. And that's a similar goal with your Convergia.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that feedback. It's really appreciated. And that's, again, like I say, we work within the telecom space, so there are some hiccups all the time. The idea is how we manage these hiccups between partners and ensuring that we can provide the right type of service that you need, to win the business when you bring it to us. So thank you for that feedback.
Of course.
I think this is where there's now that we've sort of covered off all of these things, I think we have just a few minutes left. And actually a question came in that I think is a nice transition from what we were just chatting about. And that is, the question is, what's different about providing telco services to end users in Canada versus the United States? It feels like a sort of timely moment for that question. Maybe, do you want to take that, Kevin?
Actually, Robin, why don't you take that, seeing it's Canada that's your specialty, and then I'll fill in with some commentary.
Yeah, so personally, I don't think there is any difference, right? Connectivity is connectivity, right? Some people don't like what I'm going to say, but I think fiber is fiber. The point is how you actually service those customers is the importance, right? So, working through partners like Convergia, let's be clear, we have a great working relationships. They understand what we have in terms of services, in terms of connectivity services, where our network is, what we can do, what we cannot do, and transparency is important. So as far as I'm concerned, I think it's connectivity, and how you service that customer is the key. So that's how I would say there is no difference when you're offering the right kind of service, right?
Yeah, and I can't disagree with that statement one bit. It comes down to the relationships and the partnerships within the organization. And if you are tied to the right successful groups, it just makes work that much easier going forward, for sure.
Okay, let's do one last question and we'll wrap things up. So, and I think this one's a good one maybe to throw to you first, Kevin, because we were talking about sort of the synergies of you being Canadian based with a global view, and obviously similar to BCE Global. But from a macro view, the question is, what trends are you seeing north of the border versus around the world? Are they the same, different? What trends are you seeing?
I'm not going to take the easy way out on this one, but it's straightforward. So when we look at Convergia, we are a Pan-American organization. So although we do global, our footprint, our foundation is that between Canada down to the southern tip of South America. I can't speak in regards to how that trend really varies from if we look at EMEA or the Pacific area. But I know the business is growing. Everything that we're doing currently today is evolving with greater technology, whether it's AI, you name it, but everything sensor-based is requiring the need for faster, more bandwidth, whether it's wireline or wireless. And more importantly, as the trends evolve, right, the requirement for both are there. So nobody wants to put both a primary and a redundant circuit on the same network. The ability to be able to offer it from various different organizations or various different means, whether it's wireline for primary and wireless for backup, right? But as technology evolves, so does the need for, again, greater and more across the board.
All right, Robin, final word goes to you today.
Okay. Well, I think, there is a major shift, right, in terms of technology shift. As we're seeing, I think it has started really heavily within the United States, and now it's starting to happen in Canada. And what I mean by that is that move from legacy to emerging services, such as SD-WAN and so forth. I mean, that is driving quite a bit of, as well, the changes in the customers' overall needs. So clearly, as these are coming up, this gives us a bump on how we address these needs in coming into Canada. Like I said, it really started more in the United States, I would say 2-3 years ago, from those legacy services moving away. And now it's just a ripple effect, and it's happening in Canada. And that's why that wave is important to jump on now, as a lot of those end customers are looking at other ways to actually connect really their branch offices and so forth to either do transactions or just being able to take on AI and machine learning, which obviously is what we're seeing as major changes in the marketplace.
Perfect. Well, thank you. Thank you so much, both of you. Thank you for our attendees for your questions and your attendance and your participation. If we didn't have time to get to any of your questions, never fear, we will be following up with you directly, and of course sharing this presentation for anyone who wants to see it again or maybe missed it the first time around. But again, thank you to Convergia for hosting today's webinar. Thank you, Kevin, specifically for sharing your insights on behalf of Convergia. And a special thank you to Rob and Constantin of BCE Global for joining today. And thanks to all of our attendees. Until next time, thank you. All the best.
Rob and Barb, thank you very much.
Thank you.